So welcome everybody. Glad you could join us. This is one of a series of 3 webinars that we're doing this year, leading up to a workshop in September, which you'll hear more about later on. But it's continuing an initiative that we began, at least this phase of it last year, recognizing that sustainability was such a broad and important topic for the sector, and also collaboration was really essential. It's not good enough for one postal operator, one logistics carrier, one organization to be good and doing the right things. We've all got to be good, and we've all got to be doing the right things together. And nobody has all the answers. So it's one of these things where we can collaborate, share ideas, exchange ideas and experiences and learn from each other, but also work together to make sure that the overall impact is bigger. And we think as a sector, the postal logistics parcel sector, the footprint it has on people's lives means that if as a sector we can get our act together and we can be more sustainable in every way, we can have an impact on our customers, have an impact on our suppliers, on governments, and collectively we can have a huge impact on this topic, which is of course an important topic for everybody on the planet, not just the people in our sector. So that was the rationale behind it. We've called it an imperative because we feel it is so important, and in fact we've got an obligation, we feel, to do this over and above everything else. So we're sitting in a position, Bernhard and myself, where we can provide a platform for public postal operators, but also for private sector players, also for other organizations. We're not contained by any other organization. So cross-sector collaboration can happen, and we're just providing the platforms and the vehicles for that to happen. So things like discussions, workshops, research, webinars, work, and so on are the opportunity to do that. And this is just one more opportunity we've got today to focus on reusable packaging and circular economy, which is one of the many topics. So that's the context of this. So it's part of a continuing program. We'll tell you more about the next webinar and the workshop after this, but now we'll go into this workshop, Bernhard.
Thank you very much, Derek. Yeah, as Derek said, these are really the deep dives that we are doing here. So bringing the relevant players together, the peers, and discuss those various topics. From just this spring, we have identified 3 topics where we want to zoom in on, and the first one, as I just said before, also that was e-mobility. That's 2 weeks ago. Today we're talking about reusable packaging and circular economy, and then in June we are talking about offsetting and insetting, and then we bring everything together at our annual workshop, which we are going to have in Madrid, as I already said, in September. Now this time we are talking about reusable packaging and circular economy. This is really such an important topic. It has grown over the past few years incredibly. It's an important field of testing, of research within, let's say, all postal logistics companies in the meanwhile. In addition, of course, innovative forms of packaging and also the materials which are used for it, they can considerably contribute to the reduction of waste, the reduction of emissions, which makes it really so important. And when we look at postal logistics, everything is about packaging. So if we can change a lot there, then we can already do a lot of things, and that would have an immense impact. So reusable packaging is, of course, one of the cornerstones of circular economy. But then, of course, there are others as well. So not using packaging at all, for example. So there are different ways and different approaches there. But it sounds easy just to implement something, to buy something on the market, and we know that there are many solutions out there, and you all are probably aware of that, and you all have experience of it, and some of you maybe are even working in this industry of reusable packaging. But the point is that while there are so many different solutions out there, making a choice is not so easy because there are so many different parameters that we have to consider. So, for example, how often can a package be reused? And if it can be reused a lot of times, will it be reused by the consumer? So how can we make consumers, for example, reuse a package or send it back? Is it easy to send it back, to return it into the stream again? So there are so many different questions. Then as well, the material? Is the material used, for example, from a sustainability point of view, a smart solution? Are there maybe better solutions? And also with regard to materials, it's something that is evolving over the time and never stops, of course. So, but all these parameters need to be considered. And so at the end of the day, it's kind of difficult to find out what is the right solution which I should use and how can I make my customers make to use those solutions as well. So we are going to discuss here all these aspects about circular economy, about packaging, reusable packaging, or maybe avoiding of packages. And we have speakers. I will briefly name them all here, but then we introduce them once they take the floor. So we have here with us Giorgia Vezzani. She's from Postnord. We have Bart Neyt. I think he has not joined us so far. As I just said before, I've contacted him and hopefully he will reply so that we also can hear. Oh, he just joined. Hi, Bart.
Just in time.
Just in time. Bart, can you hear us? Oh, he's just putting on his headset. Okay. Hi, Bart. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, that's perfect. And we can hear you as well, Joe. We just wanted to make sure that the connection works and that everything is fine. Perfect. Derek and I were just introducing the topic, and now I'm introducing the speakers. So you join exactly at the right moment when I present. I just already introduced the Giorgia Vezzani of Postnord. And then we have here Bart, who just joined us from bpost. We have from SAP, Christoph Kopke and Jörg Bitter, who will also present views from a slightly different angle. And then whoever else is here on the call and wants to share views, experiences, opinions, please do so. We see this really as a group, a small homogeneous group where everybody should be able to easily join and exchange among peers here. So whenever you have something where you say, okay, this maybe can also contribute to the discussion, or you have something which you want to share, for example, a use case or something that you have tested within your organization, please don't hesitate, take the floor, ask questions, and join the discussion. Having said this, maybe even though Bart, you're the first one on the list, but maybe I hand over to Giorgia because she was already on the call, so that Bart, you can just take your time to get the feeling of the meeting. Giorgia, you ready?
Yes. Okay.
So please take the floor. You can share your screen, your slides, and we'll listen to what you have to tell us. Please go ahead.
Will do so. Can everybody hear see my screen?
Yes, we can see.
Okay, good. I have you small in the corner of my screen, so if you have questions, just say it out loud because I don't think I can see your hand if you raise it, having you here in the corner. Hello, everyone. My name is Giorgia and I work in Postnord, Denmark. Postnord is a postal and logistics operator that is active in these 4 countries in Scandinavia, Denmark, Sweden, Norway, and Finland. I'm here today on behalf of Postnord Denmark. It is one of the largest operators in the Scandinavian area, and as I said before, we operate both with parcels and pallets, etc., and also with the letter business. Like probably all of the operators out there, we do have a agenda for reducing our carbon footprint, and it is shown here on the left of my screen. I'm going to focus on the environmental side of it today. We aim to be, by 2030, to exclude fossil fuels from our transport. And in order to get there, we aim to completely electrify our last mile delivery by 2027 and reduce our CO2 by 40% in 2025 compared to 2020. As this is probably something that all of the logistics operator out there have experienced. Volumes of letters are going down and the parcel volumes are going up, especially in a country like Denmark, where any kind of document is nowadays digitalized. The fall in the letter business has been dramatic. E-commerce, especially after the COVID pandemic, has really boomed in the last few years. And this actually brings us to the topic of today, packaging and reusable packaging. It is very important for me to state clearly that as a logistics operator, Postnord is handling packages that are made by other companies. So all the e-commerce companies are the ones making the packaging and we're the one transporting them. So we are in a bit of a weird position because they are our customers, basically. We did start to question what we can do. And this is why today I'm bringing to you the let's say, reflections from this packaging working group that was born in September 2022. So it's really recent. I've been the one leading it. And it's a working group that operates across the other countries involved in Postnord. So we have members from Postnord Norway, Sweden, no one from Finland at the moment. And we started what we called an exploration phase, which is to at least set a baseline. What is the situation today? What do we know today? The challenges related to packaging, some of them you actually already highlighted, Bernhard, in your introduction. It is, for example, the material that is being chosen. Plastic is a very, let's say, strong material, but it has some downsides on from the environmental side. There's the cost of how much do alternatives to normal packaging cost as of today. There's air in packages. This is something that I'll tell you about in my next slide. But there's also all of this goes we need to take care of all of this whilst in the meantime we are challenged to be able to report emissions for every single package. This is something that I, as a sustainability specialist, I'm continuously asked from our customers. Can we know the CO2 per package? We need to respect environmental KPIs, and there's incoming European legislations for the future. It's going to arrive. They're already discussing it, and some targets have already been set for 2030 and beyond. So our working group has three work streams. One focusing on the air reduction in packages. One is actually what this webinar today is about, the secondary packaging and therefore reusable packaging. And the third one is how to reduce single-use items in our company, coffee cups. Not necessarily pertinent to what we're talking about today, but it is what we also work with. When it comes to air reduction in packages, what I was struck to discover was that it is nearly impossible to set a baseline. It is nearly impossible to understand how much air is being transported in packages today because of privacy issues. Once a label is put on a package, you cannot use scanning devices to kind of understand how much air in packages is in. There's a general assumption that says we usually transport 30% extra air in packages, but I wouldn't even know what the source of that is. It's just something that I've heard several times. There's the issue of business models. We already have business models set with customers which are difficult to change. Bigger customers, for example, have some certain business models based on certain kinds of weight. Smaller customers have another one. So changing it to disincentivize them to have less air in packages could really risk to lose customers. So the baseline, the starting points for the air reduction is actually quite depressing. It is really difficult. When it comes to secondary packaging, since we are a logistics operator, so we transport on behalf of others, it's really important that we work with the customers. So it's very important that we establish a dialogue with them to A, make them aware of incoming legislation, B, suggest piloting solutions with them using some solutions which are available on the market. There are more and more, luckily, circular packaging solutions coming on the market. And so what we can do as an operator, where we can place ourselves as a logistics operator, is to raise awareness with customers and start testing with small pilots these reusable solutions. Last point is the price. Up until very recently, reusable solutions were more expensive than single-use packaging. But I'm happy to hear that more and more we're getting to the point where it's almost as cheap as one-time use. And this is positive because this will incentivize our customers, so the e-commerce operators, hopefully to test this. Now, I'm just going to, this is my last slide. So I just want to tell you what I just told you was the baseline. Now I'm just going to focus on what we decided to do, since those were our starting points. We're now working on packaging instructions. So we are preparing a document to share with our customers to just inform them on give them some tips on how they could improve the way they package. We're, of course, fully aware that the way they do their packaging is they rely on some machine systems which are very difficult to change. But there are a couple of things that we can make them aware of. I have started talking about changing the business models. As of today, I haven't really found a solution on how we could change them in a way that doesn't disrupt the relationship with customers too much. But I know that Postnord TPL, which is a part of our business active in Sweden, is testing a new solution called the Scrum, which is an AI solution. It's a database that kind of analyzes historical data to tell Postnord what is the best dimensions of packaging that they should use. Secondary packaging, we are now engaging in a dialogue with customers, and we have decided that the best thing that we can do is inform customers about existing pilots to test these solutions with them, and B, inform them about upcoming legislation so that we can at least inform them and help them be ready for when these regulatory demands will become more binding in the future. One last word on the fact of reducing single-use items. This is about things that can be done at the office, but I think it kind of applies to any area. We've decided to communicate more and more with our employees about what they can do, because often people don't do certain things that could be better for the environment simply because they don't know. So we should never give for granted that people who do not directly work with sustainability know so much as we do. So we're organizing a continuous, not too much, otherwise it's overwhelming, but a flow of information for them to make them more aware. That was it for me, 10 minutes. I'm gonna, you're welcome. Yeah, that was it.
Thank you very much, Giorgia. Very informative. You packed a lot into that 10 minutes and covered a range of issues that I think illustrates how important, but also how complicated it is. And just a couple of quick follow-up questions, if I may, and then before we move on.
Of course.
I think you're involved in reporting and doing the environmental reporting for Postnord to some extent.
I am.
So what do you think are the key metrics for packaging?
Packaging is not part of Postnord's reporting right now, because we transport it on behalf of others. We will have to report on our own waste, which a part of it also includes packaging, but for the moment we do not foresee a KPI, let's say a legal KPI coming on the packaging that we handle. But again, legislations are coming, so it could be that we will have to at a certain point.
It's just because obviously targets and numbers incentivize action, don't they? As we know. And your last point about reduction, obviously, apart from reuse, reduction using less is much better in all cases, of course. But back to the with customers, I think that's very interesting because obviously that's part of this whole initiative of persuading people that it's important and raising awareness of the impact of what they're doing. And obviously the whole surge in growth in e-commerce during COVID was going in the wrong direction in terms of volumes of packages, and yet everybody found it very convenient. So somehow I'm thinking that the awareness raising with end consumers is still going to be quite a challenge.
It is definitely. And, but again, because of these solutions that I hope will become more and more available, will spread out. And I'm talking about reusable solutions, even though we only have a small role in that because we can convince customers to test some pilots. What I'm hoping is that our employees, but everyone in general, by realizing that these solutions are available, will maybe choose that option when they go and buy something online. They can see that, by paying a little bit more, or I hope in the future even the same, they can have the reusable option and they will choose that one. So
yeah, and that's a good way to go, and by nudging and influencing and driving it in that way. Well, I'm sure other people have got questions. We'll come back to that. We'll have a question time later on. But for the time being, Giorgia, thank you. That was very interesting and well communicated. And now I'd like to introduce Bart. If you're ready, are you, Bart? Bart Neyt from bpost, who's managing innovative and sustainable solutions for bpost. So over to you, Bart.
Thank you, Derek. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Giorgia, for the first presentation. I think my presentation will just go continuing on your same approach. bpost, I don't have to present you, I believe, is the Belgian postal and parcel operator. And I will share my slides meanwhile. There they go. What I will be talking about this afternoon is reusable packaging, but only the part of e-commerce. So also, as Giorgia, we're not talking about what bpost itself is using as packaging. It's what we offer our clients, our e-shop, our e-commerce clients, what they can do with their packaging to get them back to reuse. We have done a pilot, several pilots last year with some clients, and we just introduced the concept of, okay, the package which is sold or leased, whatever business model, towards e-shoppers. Okay, they use that packaging to send towards the consumers. Well, the consumers scan it freely, return it via our red letterbox, and then it just goes a manual flow like letters. Only it's not mechanical, it's some manual work, and we all group them in a virtual box where we stack them until we have significant amount, and then we just all send them towards one, let's call it cleaning point, where we only have to take out the destination label of the first sending, and then normally the package can be reused again. So we actually use the free postal system because volumes in letters is going down, so there's some free capacity, and we use that flow to compensate with now reusable packaging that has the size, maximum size, if you can fold them, of a letterbox. And if you work in an agile approach and you do a proof of concept and minimal viable product, well, you have a lot of assumptions before doing that. Well, we have plenty of them. I can't tell them all in 8 to 10 minutes, but we can discuss them afterwards. But there are a lot of things that we have checked out, and it was a system which really worked and now is operational. There are other things that didn't test or we were unable to really analyze. For example, the question is from, okay, you have the R in reduce, reuse, recycle, things like. What is the real impact on carbon when you have a disposable loop, but it is recycled carton? Okay, there are some transports, there are some works and fabrics to be done from reuse carbon or recycle carbon. Okay, you have pulp, you have again carton, and then you have again packaging, but is that really that much more carbon CO2 using, or is it less? We are not a specialist. That's up to audits to do a really LCA on both ways. And it also depends on what material you're using, as also Giorgia mentioned. Okay, what's the best? What size fits the market? We did some tests with Heaply, which is a France company. Well, they use polypropylene plastic bags. They're very solid. They can use multiple, even 100 times, but it still remains plastic. On the other hand, you have Recip, which is from Denmark, I believe. They use carbon. They use cardboard. So it's another approach. It's another way. So we don't know and we don't decide. It's open to our customers. Both systems are available. And it's the beginning of a learning. We know everybody's thinking about it, everybody is analyzing, but there's no one-fits-all solution for everything. We have now developed something which is quite simple, which is limited to the red letterbox. It's simple, everybody has it nearby, it can be used. It gives a good net promoter score, everybody is fond of it, it's simple. But as we said, there's no standard. What is the size? What is the product which needs to be used? And not all goods can be transported in packaging which can be folded towards a small letterbox. There will be things which are still too big to transport on that way. And then it has an impact on price, the price to get it back. As mentioned also by Giorgia, you have to remain within limits of, okay, what's the price of a single-use packaging, what is the price of getting your package back? And also things which are quite difficult to see some, okay, who is willing to return those packages? Is it an option in your checkout website where you say from knowing that it's that much CO2 or things like that? Do you really want to have it reusable packaging? Then please return it. Then hopefully the percentage of returns will be quite high. But otherwise, you could say from, okay, I will use with deposit fees to get the packaging back, or it will be obliged by government. Or on the other side, you can say from, okay, I will only incentivize them with loyalty vouchers on a next purchase. And hopefully when you return the package, you will get a discount on your next thing. So there are still a lot of questions which remains open, which depends on which target group you have as a client, in which sector you're active. So it's not all that conclusive. And all the details I have behind, I can keep for questions or for if people want to discuss on it in a one-to-one.
Okay, thank you very much, Bart. You have talked in the beginning about a couple of pilots that you did. And those
Correct.
pilots, did they concern more the materials, so the providers of packaging and the different solutions that are in the market, or did those pilots also concern the circularity aspects of it? Can you say a bit more about that? Yeah.
First of all, we looked in the market what exists as packaging. We didn't want to develop something ourselves because then you don't have a minimum viable product. Just use what's in it. And we tested in market surveys from, okay, customers, do you understand what this package is used for? Or you just shop and you get the package and you don't even look on it on the outside what it's used for, and you just throw it away as plastic or throw it away as carton. So that was one step, and that's why we chose Heaply, because they have a lot of these signs on the outside of their packaging, and so it's very comprehensive, even for somebody who did not proactively choose to participate in the test. A second thing we tested was from, okay, what's the impact for the eShop? You could say from, okay, in your website, please add a field, a checkbox from, yes, I want reusable packaging. If you choose that, then the e-shopper also has to change the picking table and the way of working behind it. It's easy to say in a marketing discussion from, hey, just let's test this. But then the people in the warehouse say from, hey, oh, that order needs a reusable packaging. The next order doesn't need reusable packaging. How will I organize my my workflow, and I will lose too much time to pack them and things like that. So that was the second time. So we said from, okay, what's feasible, what's not feasible? Let's do it with 100 samples. Okay, no, that takes too much time. Okay, then finally we decided from, why not just send 5,000 items during several months in several waves, but we don't let the customer residential decide. It's just from, okay, just send them. So you have the believers who will receive it, but you will also have the non-believers receive it. And we send them a questionnaire afterwards saying from, you received something, were you aware it was reusable packaging? How did you identify it? What did you do about it? Did you understand how to send it back? And then we checked, actually, did we have the reusable packaging sent back? How much time did it took? And just that were all the tests we've done.
Okay, maybe during the discussion you can share a bit more about those test results, because the customer and how they appreciate in the customer behavior, I think it's one of the topics where we want to discuss maybe later on, because everybody I think will have a view on that. But just one more question. These were the pilots. Is it now implemented, or when is the implementation planned, rollout of the reusable packaging?
The implementation in Belgium is going on for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
We have Hipli, we have Rezip, we have other customers who have their proper packaging, and then we're just putting in place from, okay, you need a signing a barcode on your packaging, so that we follow it and we can bill you for each package that's coming back. And so we're just implementing it and doing some beta testing on, okay, ICT, is the billing correct, is the reporting correct, and things like that. But we are implementing it for the moment, yes.
And for the customers that don't use Rezip or Hipli, the only condition is that the reusable packaging fits into the red letter box. Is that it?
For this moment, the organization is done. It has to be considered as a letter, so it is returned via the red letter box. You can drop it in a post office, but it has the size of a letter. You can hand it over when your mailman is coming, passing your door, but he will not come and ring up the bell. And it's not like a parcel; it's like a letter. And everybody, a client says, "From I have my own packaging. I don't need to rent them from Rezip or have a leasing." Okay, he can use it for himself. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much for clarifying these points. Okay, we have our last presentation of today, and this is from Jörg Bitter, and he's from SAP. Jörg, you ready?
Yes, sure. So
perfect. Please take the floor. You can also share your slides yourself.
Yes, I will do this. Yeah. So are you able to see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
All right. Yes. Okay. So from SAP, we were also thinking about how to get more reusable packaging on the road, and for this help to get a circular economy going. So with this, we were looking into various industries and how they are using returnable packaging right now. And there we found a good example in the automotive industry, which is already reusing maybe 80% of their packaging right now. And they have introduced something that is called returnable packaging accounts with their suppliers. So here we we looked at this flow. So if you see in the center, you see an automotive company that is exchanging packaging with their suppliers on the left-hand side, and with their customers, which might be an automotive company on the right-hand side. And they have, of course, all kinds of problems because if you are using returnable packaging, you need to have it in your stock. So you have to be clear on the stock situation. You have to order it back from your suppliers if you have sent it to them. You have to do rental calculation in case it's your own packaging and you want to claim rental fees for it. And for this, we have in the last 3 years created a solution on our business technology platform, which makes it possible to help companies not only in the automotive industry but all over all industries to track these returnable packagings. So what we are doing is, on the one hand, we make it possible to track, to define packaging agreements. This is like the packaging instructions that we already heard from, and make it possible to charge and control rental fees. And on the other hand, we manage also the accounts with the various suppliers and customers, so that it's possible to track the amount of rentals which we are owing to a certain supplier or which a customer owes to us. So this solution is integrated in the SAP S4 solution. So if you have an SAP backend, this solution works with it together. So we have also looked into use cases in the postal service before, and this was some ideas we got recently. So we had a look at one use case where there is a returnable box that is being exchanged from the postal service to customers who are delivering lots of packages, lots of letters in a on a daily basis. And there it is also important to see how much of these packages are being exchanged during the time, and that these boxes are returned timely. And this is also possible to work to use our returnable packaging solution with. When we're looking at containers, the automotive industry normally works with containers which are quantity based, so a pallet or a regular container that can just be exchanged just on a quantity basis. So it's not important which kind of container you are getting returned, as long as it is of the same type. But looking at other kinds of industries, especially the chemical industry, there we have the case that the returnable packaging is quite costly, and it is very important that a special container is returned in the same way as it was sent out. And these serialized containers we can track as well with our solution. So there you can see directly which kind of container you sent out and when you got it back. We are offering with this solution different capabilities. On the one hand, as I already said, there is an account management, which means we are having accounts with our different suppliers and customers to see how much packaging has been sent out or received by them. And with this, we have a framework for doing all kinds of calculations, for example, for doing rental calculations, and also to perform planning, so that we can deliver. We have always enough packaging to deliver to our different customers. And another thing that we will focus in the future in this solution is to give also the external partners access to this solution. So the external partners will be able to see their account statements, their postings, and will also be able to order returnable packaging from our company. So this will help to decentralize also the planning process and make it possible to directly interact here. So this solution is available right now. It is able to, you can try it out with a free trial. And we are constantly adding also functionalities to it. So we are right now in the implementation phase with some big customers. And so we think that in the end of the year, we will be able to have these customers also already live. So if you want to know more about the solution, you can directly contact me or go to the SAP Help portal or go to or have a look at the free trial, but also looking forward to the discussion here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jörg. And I think your final piece answers the question I asked Giorgia earlier on, which is about quantifying the results, putting figures on quantifying the reduction in cost, reduction in energy use potentially. With those closed loop systems and your SAP system, I can see how you can measure and demonstrate the benefits economically and environmentally of having a closed loop reusable system. That I think is interesting, and I'm sure other people will be interested to pick up on it. But I'd like to go back to your earlier slides and talk about the open loops, which is the dilemma for most of the postal operators, is that they're sitting in the middle and they're not in control of the originating of the packaging, which is usually the web shops or the people who are selling goods on e-commerce, or in control of the end consumer, who is obligated, if it's going to work, to return the reusable packaging. So it's based on influence and also an inability to control, an inability in some cases to measure the value of it. So it's a different kind of challenge, being in the middle as looking at the closed loops. So I think it illustrates nicely what the problem is. It doesn't necessarily help us, your closed loop solution, it doesn't necessarily help us get into the regular use of packaging, because unless a supplier or an originator of packaging is going to take the whole thing on board, which I'm not sure they are. And that was my question to any of you, or particularly perhaps to bpost and to Postnord, but maybe any others who are listening in, is what kind of response have you got by talking to web shops, to e-commerce providers, to platforms who are in most cases got these dilemmas, as you mentioned it. I think it was Bart saying, they're packaging and somebody wants a reusable packaging and somebody doesn't, and they're obviously under obligations to be as efficient on picking and packing as possible, and under commercial pressures. How receptive are they to reusable packaging solutions? Are they driving it, or are they reluctantly taking it on board? And what approaches have you made, maybe Giorgia or Bart or somebody else, about approaches to platforms who are originating the packaging? Giorgia.
Postnord is currently undergoing one pilot with one customer, so it's not me, it's someone else who has responsibility for this. I wish she was here so she could answer, but she didn't mention any challenges. I mean, the customers seem receptive, and right now we have made a list of, I would say, 2-3 customers whom we would like to start this pilot with. I think they are receptive. What I expect, though, is for them to be receptive as long as it doesn't involve too high of a cost for them. Because at the end of the day, I mean, we're talking about businesses making business. So unless there's too big of a price difference, they are willing to, but it has to be economically viable. Otherwise, they're not.
And unless somebody regulatory pressures say you can't use single-use packaging or something like that, in which case it's a bit like single-use plastic. It might just come in because they've got to, but until they can see an economic benefit from it, which might be driven by the other consumers, the end consumers, who might demand it. But I don't see that happening on a wide scale yet. No,
not yet, especially because the regulatory, let's say, requests that are going to come, what I've seen, and please, if I'm saying something wrong, update me on that, but they are coming, but they're mostly targeting 2030, 2040. So I think no one is still feeling the pressure yet. Maybe if we'll talk about this in 3 or 4 years, something will have changed. But as of now, I don't think the pressure is felt yet. And at the same time, there are quite a lot of different solutions. There's not one standard reusable packaging solution. I've heard of many different solutions. So it's not a case of consolidating around one solution that everybody's going to buy into that would also make operations simpler. Anybody else listening in want to add into this conversation about Dorothea, please? And perhaps you can introduce where you're from as well, so we know.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you first for all the presentation. I think it's really very interesting. I'm Dorothea from Inform Software Solutions, and I guess some of my colleagues like Dirk Schlemper and Jennifer Stead might be known to the one or the other of you. And I'm willing to share a video film in the chat about a returnable packaging solution that we have developed. I will do that after I have been talking, but I have a question, and that is, are there ideas available, or maybe also tests that invite end users? Because I see that the tricky part is to get the returnable packaging back from the end users. And I wonder, I mean, if I think about myself, I would be very willing to bring them back to the same place in Germany where I also bring back my reusable bottles. Yeah, so for instance, we have these collecting points for reusable bottles in every supermarket or discounter, because we have this, extra fee on reusable bottles, so you get some money back if you deliver it in. And I wonder if you could, if there is anything in any country, these types of solutions are already tested, because this works really well, at least in Germany. I don't know about the other countries, but in Germany it really works very well to bring back all the bottles to Aldi or Lidl or you name it, or also the higher end supermarkets, and they take all the different types of bottles so that it's not a hassle. And also, and I could imagine that, if we would position comparable collection points for reusable packaging next to the reusable bottles, then it would be really easy to bring these reusable packages back.
And if they were incentivized with a little return fee
Exactly.
like you do with bottles,
I mean, because
that would make a difference.
And at least in Germany, people are used to do this. So for me, it wouldn't make a difference to collect on the one hand the bottles, and on the other hand, have another box where I put the packaging, and then bring it back on when I'm doing my groceries on a regular basis.
Yeah, conceptually that makes a lot of sense for a system to work. I'm not sure where you'd start with that, but I can see that. Thank you, Dorothea, for that, and pass on my regards to Jennifer Stead, who I do know, one of your colleagues.
Yes, I will do that.
Can we come to Peter from DHL GB? Peter.
Hi there. Yeah, so I'm Senior Director for Innovation across Europe for DHL. Interesting to pick up on the point that you made around the postal operators sort of being stuck in the middle. We don't really see it that way. We actually see we have a pretty good opportunity to actually shape the market. And, you know, I'm not here to sort of promote what we're doing, but one of the concepts that we're exploring is, in the same way you have your food delivered to you, you know, for your takeaway, it comes in a nice heat-proof bag, and they hand you your food, and they take away the heat-proof bag, your pizza delivery or what have you. You know, we're trialing the same thing in multiple countries now for deliveries. So the courier takes the packaging away, and by doing so, we actually create that extremely closed loop model. It costs us more, the delivery time's longer, etc. But we are able to create a closed loop in an environment where typically there isn't one. Obviously, people like Rezip are doing a great job in the more open market, and there's benefits of that for certain customers. But I don't think we should just sort of opt out from a logistics perspective and say we don't have a role to play.
Thank you for that, Peter. And I don't think we were suggesting opting out. We're just saying it's a bit more challenging. But I do take on board what you're saying, is that one of the reasons we're talking about this is because we do feel we have an ability to shape the market, shape our customers, shape our suppliers, shape the people we work with, and influence them. And that's a very important role we could play. Just building on that last point you made about similarity with food delivery, I have heard examples of, I'm just trying to think where I heard it just recently, of one operator who's talking about delivering without packaging at all. In other words, just delivering the good and opening it and supplying it to the person, the recipient, and no packaging involved, which obviously takes away the packaging issue. It doesn't take away some of the other logistics, environmental issues, but at the moment we're talking about packaging. Thank you for that, Peter. And have you got trials going or working arrangements going on at the moment that use that system?
Yeah, we've got multiple trials with some fairly big brands in different countries. We're doing it on a domestic basis at the moment, and the aim being then to be able to do cross-border, but not return the packaging obviously back to the original country.
Gets more complicated then, doesn't it?
Yeah, we've got quite a, you know, that SAP system that was explained. We've basically created our own to help manage the inventory, and we're using you know, smart sensors and what have you to keep track of that inventory as it moves around our network, to reduce the manual burden of having to keep track of which packages are in which location.
That's it, because there's net flows as well, presumably, that go in one direction or another, and you could end up with a lot of packages somewhere needed elsewhere.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you can manage that, but also you can quantify presumably the economic and environmental benefits of the system whilst you're doing those measurements.
Yeah, and we certainly feel we're in a position where, you know, a packaging provider can't offer what we're offering. The retailers can't offer what we're able to do, and we have that role connecting, you know, the different players, and we can leverage that position. Not necessarily, you know, we're not even looking to make it a commercial proposition, but as a way of providing a service to our customers to retain customers, right? Because they're all looking for the most sustainable approach now.
And they look to you then as a green supplier.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I don't want to ambush the call, but I just said, just a quick question on I saw Hipley was mentioned earlier, and you made a comment that it could be used up to 100 times. I'm a bit concerned when I hear comments like that, because I think I think Hipley even published themselves that their return rate is below 20%. So that means actually they're getting used, well, not even twice on average, right? So there's a big disparity between what a packaging can do versus what it does do. And I think, you know, you had Rezip up there, and they're a fantastic example of where they're saying, you know, it gets used 70-80%. We design it to be used 4 or 5 times. It can go in the recycling bin at the end. So that's a really kind of clever way of managing that open loop. I don't know what people's thoughts are around some of the marketing that goes with the more plastic-based products.
Do you want to comment on that, Bart, first, and then see others?
Yeah, well, as Peter mentioned, yeah, there's the technical feasibility. The plastic bags of Hipley can be easily used 100 times because they're very solid. It's polypropylene. Of course, if only 20% comes back, okay, after 3 times you have 20% of 20% of 20%. It's almost zero, and all that plastic is somewhere. Must say that I don't know about other countries. Our tests, more than 60% of people returned it, and it were surprise sending. So they didn't even choose themselves from, yes, I want reusable packaging. So if you, on one hand, give the opportunity in the checkout to choose for reusable packaging, and on top of that, you use either a deposit fee or an incentive, then like the returns of the bottles in Germany, also in Belgium, I think the return rate can be quite high. I agree what Recip says as well. They use carton board, and carton board after 4, 5, 7 times, you see the difference in quality. You can say from, okay, put them in the recycle loop and not the reusable loop. But we have a local Belgian concept of sustainable goods. They even go get plastic publicity papers which are outside garages and things like that, which is already waste, and they use waste. They just cut them in a manual workforce, and they make package out of them. So it is already waste which is reused. So it all depends on how you position it and how you develop it.
I see a question for Peter in the chat box. Do you want to ask the question, Giuseppe?
Yeah, good question. So the questions around delivery exceptions and what have you. Yeah, so we've modeled that through. If the we've got various delivery options. If the person's not there, then we'll take the shipment back like we would normally. I mean, I work within the express business, so we don't just doorstep shipments. They have the option of taking it to a service point, and then the packaging would remain in the service point. That's still, we consider that to be part of our extended network. And for different countries, we're trialing different approaches with things like when someone requests that it's left with a neighbor, safe place deliveries. These are the sorts of things we're testing out at the moment, and it varies depending upon the customer we're trialing with, the value of the product, and also local behaviors as to what's deemed appropriate. I think the common theme throughout the trials has been we've always surprised at the level of risk is, I think, always overstated. People are always concerned about the exception of the exception, and in reality, we've seen examples where people are having their products left with a neighbor with no packaging, and had no issues with that. Not to say that will be the same everywhere. You know, we've done trials with shoe companies, jewelry companies, fashion companies, hardware companies. So the product range has been quite diverse, and we've learned quite a lot through that as well.
Thank you. That's helpful. I've got 2 other questions have been sort of not quite addressed directly. Giorgia asked one firstly about shipping air. That's the first, if you like, the main trip with packaging. And I remember your CEO commenting about that 30% from Postnord was saying, isn't it shocking to be shifting so much air? And I don't know if anybody else has thought about how we can reduce that apart from much better sized, specific sized packaging for specific items. The second thing is, what is the trade-off? Is there a trade-off? Is there a comparison between the cost of returns of reusable packaging, in other words, returning it, the logistics to return it, versus just direct, straight recycling, so cardboard or something that can be recycled directly? Is it better just to recycle it after the first time versus trying to move reusable packaging back to where it started from, which might involve quite a bit of logistics, transport, and everything else? So those are just 2 question marks I still have. I don't know if anybody wants to pick up either of those in the discussion. Giorgia.
Yes, thanks, Eric. I'll pick up on the first one about the air in packaging. It is hard because there are some strict guidelines regarding the way items should be packed, meaning that the cardboard has to be of a certain thickness and there has to be some air inside in order to prevent the goods being damaged. So if, for example, the customers, so the web shops, fail to comply with this and the package gets damaged, so if they are wrong and they don't have enough air, for example, the legislation with Postnord is that Postnord does not refund the client. So if it gets damaged because you, client, have not put enough air, we are not the ones who refund you.
Yeah.
It's so this regulatory issue actually makes it really difficult to try and change this, especially at a business model level. We always go back to that because the real trigger here is actually the legislation, so the rules that we have set with our customers. I am really looking forward to see how this solution that we're testing, Skrym, SKRYM, it's a Swedish
Great name.
Yeah, it's I'll write it in the chat maybe. So it's actually using historical data to and AI solutions to try and make Postnord more aware of what is the most typical size of package that we should be using. And if you go on their website, you also see they published the partnership with Postnord. That was with regards to air and packages. So this is to say, it is hard. I don't really know what to do. Let's see what this solution will bring. But when it comes to your second point about what we think is best, I'll actually pick up on the question that Peter asked out loud before. I remember having this conversation with Rezip, and he you know, I can't remember his name, but he stressed the fact that they don't really want to focus on durability, so they're not really interested in making something that can last many times, because we know, or at least it has been proven, that it's really hard to reach some high return rates, and they would rather which is something instead that Finnish company Repack has tried doing in the past. They tried to develop something which would last longer. So they said, no, we're actually doing something that is not supposed to last that much, and instead do it in a material where we can be sure that only after 2 or 3 reuses it's already carbon neutral, and maybe after 4 it's already carbon negative. I thought it was a really interesting way of putting it.
That's practical way of looking at it, isn't it? Yeah. Realistic.
Definitely. It's realistic, exactly.
Yeah. Dorothea, you wanted to come in on that conversation?
Yeah. We have been also in another division of Inform looked at reducing the packaging and also by this reducing the air which is transported. And we could show that it is possible using operations research methods, also to figure out in which way to pack in a van most appropriate. If you have packages of different sizes, how do you do it so that you can pack the van most effectively, so that there is also no losses. But then when we suggested this to the customer who asked for this, also from a perspective of sustainability, it became clear that for them in the production process, it would be much more expensive, you know, to have a machine that sometimes puts stuff into a bigger and sometimes into a smaller package. So for them, in the production process, it would create so much extra effort to tune, you know, to build their standardized processes back into something differentiated, that they said it doesn't make business sense. So next to legislation, we also have to have in back mind the cost considerations, and only in the moment that packaging also becomes more expensive, and that there might be something like a price on on air, a transported air or something, you know, I think this will change because the way we have organized our industries is so standardized at this, you know, it is so much about standardizing everything that creating waste, especially also, and I experience transporting air as a form of waste, is built in the system.
No, that's a fair point, and I mean you could imagine some environmental taxing system that taxes air and taxes packaging as well. Bart, do you want to come back? You're on mute.
Now does it work?
Now we hear you.
Yeah, okay. I just wanted to add the experience we just saw when we did it last year with the pilots. When you're working with people, it's also a human factor. The person working on the picking table, okay, even if he gets an order and he says from use packages 3 or uses packages number 4, he has to put it in. And if you have multiple goods to put inside a box and you don't really find the way to put it, you can use to try the box with the tiniest one, but if you don't get it in and you have to take it out and take a larger box, you're losing too much time.
Yeah.
So people, once they have done that experience from losing time and they are chronometrized of you have done that much orders in 1 hour, then they know to be sure I always take a box which is a little bit too big. And there has to be some, I don't know, software or things like that that can be optimized, but it remains a human factor.
Yeah, there's some clever machinery that can optimize the right size, but I think we've all seen examples of just big enough or just enough, but we've also seen some from a company we won't name who have huge boxes with very small items in them. And that just seems to be so wrong in so many ways. I don't know if there's any more conversation that people would like to, or discussion would like to have about packaging, but I just wanted to go back to the broader topic of circular economy and perhaps recycling and reuse. And Giorgia mentioned in the Postnord about single-use coffee cups, reusing coffee cups. And I just wonder if there's some other examples. I know, for example, Swiss Post, I mean, not just like that, Swiss Post have had a long-term policy of passing their uniforms out for reuse, recycling with, I think, people who need clothing, and they just take the badges off and they recycle their vehicles as well for second life. And I think with a large postal organization, there's a lot of scope for reuse and recycling materials, as well as other kinds of circular economy like equipment and materials to be reworked and reused. I don't know if there's anything else that innovative examples that people want to share about that. Giorgia.
I mean, if other examples that come to mind again are the uniforms. I know that Postnord is right now in the process of changing its uniforms. A new color will be added, and I know that we are trying to do it in a way where we can use the older ones for the new ones. But also one thing that I know at least the office in Copenhagen does, which is where I am, after a certain amount of time, computers and screens need to be changed. And I know that we managed to find an agreement with a company on the other side of Denmark, for which we give all this electronic material, we take it there, and we on trucks that would in any case have to go in that direction. That is probably the advantage of being a logistic operator. You will always find a lift somewhere. So all this material is taken there, where it is disassembled and kind of reused in certain ways. And I was very relieved to hear this, because we're all quite aware about the how technology and IT equipment, how polluting it can be. So I thought, and I'm wondering if any of the participants here also are subject to some policies for which you have to maybe change your computers once in a while. And if you know what happens with your equipment, I'm also curious to know about that.
Good point. And of course, the raw materials are not important things in electronic. Dorothea.
Yeah, I mean, we do the same. We offer our no longer used electronic devices to social institutions, partly also to kindergartens or schools or whoever needs them. But there is also an organization close by, which is a social business. They have as employees lots of disabled people. And they, it's a social business, and they then refurbish old computers and printers and screens, and then they are sold for a very good price to organizations or private people who don't have so much money but still need access, and they do it with warranty and all of that. So I think that's also a very good circular approach.
Thank you for that. I think it's that we've covered a lot of reuse and recycle. The one it's hard to really address as a business is reduce, isn't it? I mean, we can try and reduce the resources we use, but quite a lot of the business we do, we don't necessarily want to reduce it. And we saw the impact of the letter reductions in Postnord's figures. Those were very profitable letters, and obviously that's a lot of profit that's no longer there. So reduction is a much more of a tricky one. Reduced consumption, because we rely on consumption to make a business turnaround to some extent.
But maybe, Derek, there's one other angle which has been also mentioned before and which could be quite interesting. It's the complete abandoning the use of packaging. So I mean, Swiss Post has bought some time ago a company which is called No Time. And the idea is to deliver things without using packaging, so bringing the items there and taking the container, whatever it is, back. So really taking one element out of the loop, which is creating all the waste. And there are more and more consumers that are looking for these kind of solutions, because there is some kind of discrepancy, of course, and contradiction in the market. On the one hand side, consumers that say there's too much packaging and there is too much waste, and on the other side, if we've heard that not enough of the reusable packaging is sent back, actually, which is kind of contradictory. But in the end, I mean, consumers, I still think they tend to want to reduce packaging, want to reduce waste. So the example of Swiss Post and No Time, are there any other organizations, I'm curious, who are experimenting with delivery models that do not kind of need any kind of packaging? Is anybody here who is also testing this, experimenting with it, or seeing this as a viable business model for the future?
Not here from Postnord. It's a very interesting concept. I'm curious to hear how you can prevent damages with this model, because it is something that we need to take into consideration. I don't know that Postnord is testing this, but I'm really curious to hear the experiences of those who have. So if someone is in the call, let us know.
Anybody who has experience with that? So it doesn't seem so far. But I mean, it's of course, Dorothea, please. Yes.
Well, I think here we have to look into the B2B business, because in the B2B business, in the context of just-in-time production, in the supply chains, especially in supply chains like the automotive industry, there have been developed very special reusable packages, where certain items 100% fit into, so that all of the other product-related packaging is no longer required. And I think it's the same for certain containers in the chemical industry, which have very special characteristics so that stuff stays cool or under certain pressure or whatever. I don't think that we have that in end user situations currently. So here, I think if we really want to learn a lot, we need to look into the B2B world. And there certainly many solutions can be found that that might be applicable to other areas as well, as long as the end user is accepting it. And I think that also will, and I mean, that also will depend a lot on the good, you know. But I wanted to point to another interesting development that many of you might be aware of, and that is the product passports. I think something that, especially in logistics and in transportation, we have to really carefully observe is the reverse logistics. How are we going to set it up? You know, from, for instance, the collection points, bring the packaging back to where it is required, but also for products that are in end of lifetime. When we think about circular economy and really want to close the loop, then in some way all the materials that are at the end of their lifetime need to go back to where they can be upgraded or reused, or you know, whatever then happens with them. And that will require that we build up a new type of logistical route, yeah, depending where we read out all the information that is in the product passports, which are currently developed for the virgin products. So this is something that, I mean, in the broader context of circular economy, really also needs to be, on the radar screen, not for tomorrow, but for the day after tomorrow, I would say.
There's another example, Bernhard, I could just share, which I shared in our workshop in Vienna. So it's not last year, it's not a new example, but it's focusing more on recycling. It was during COVID when various initiatives were underway and the growth in e-commerce in Thailand. And Thailand Post had this initiative, which I thought was quite innovative and is quite interesting. They said you can just return any of your packaging via the letterboxes, like we've already heard in Belgian Post, to Thailand Post. Thailand Post took all the packaging back and commissioned a third-party recycler to convert it into desks and chairs for education for people who weren't getting educated. In other words, a social good coming out of the recycling, reworking of the packaging. So I thought that was innovative, and it also it avoided the waste side of the packaging because it all returned, and they picked it up in their normal collection. So I thought that was an interesting example.
Okay, yeah. I think there are many examples out there, and but this is exactly the reason why we are doing this, to find all those examples and exchange on all those different points. And we are certainly going to talk about all those things at some of our upcoming events. Maybe we go to that point now, because we are nearly finishing the 90 minutes here. But Derek and I want to announce a couple of things. And if you haven't listened in to our last call 2 weeks ago, where we talked about e-mobility, we announced it already. Reusable packaging, circular economy, that will be one of the big topics which we are going to discuss at this year's workshop in Madrid. I have already mentioned it at the very beginning, and Derek also referred to those physical events that we have set up. So we started last year in Vienna, and the idea is really to bring sustainability experts together to discuss various topics that are interesting and where it is important to exchange with peers from other companies, to exchange on use cases, experiences, which suppliers, which technologies do you use, all these different kinds of questions where everybody can learn, and which are not really competitive, let's say. We're really in an area of collaboration because everybody can only win. So we had all those different discussions last year in Vienna, and that was our first workshop. And then we said, okay, this shall be a continuous, well, a cycle. This shall continue every year. We want to do one workshop where we can all come together and discuss all those different points for 2 to 3 days. So we usually meet already in the evening of the first day and get to know each other and start the discussions if you want. And then have really 2 days of quite intense workshop discussions with exchange. So everybody really shall join into these different topics. So this year, the workshop, so if you haven't heard about it yet, so pencil it maybe into your calendar already. It's from 30th to 15th of September. So we'll meet in Madrid. It's not really in Madrid. It's right outside Madrid, but not far. It's really the outskirts of Madrid. But it's in a very, very nice, well, how shall I say? It's a conference hotel if you want, but a small one. So the places are limited, but it's in a very green setting, in a park and everything. So we really, really stay together there for those 2 to 3 days and have a lot of opportunities to discuss, exchange, and Koreas, who is partnering with us on this workshop, they're also going to organize. I don't know exactly what it is, and they don't know either yet. But it's kind of a walk where we can kind of deep dive into some in some topics of sustainability that not necessarily are linked, of course, to postal logistics, but it all plays together somehow. So 13th to 15th of September, close to Madrid. When we send out the mail, the follow-up mail to this event, we'll put all the information in it again. You can also register already for it. So there is a web page where you can go, write in your name and everything that you're interested to join. And as I said, packaging and circular economy will be one of the top topics. But we're also going to discuss some other topics about fleet transformation, for example. We are going to discuss about insetting and offsetting, taxonomy. So there are many different topics where we want to zoom on, and I think it's going to be really interesting. Vienna, for those who have participated there, it was really a great exchange, and coming together in such a group for such an important topic and spending really 2 days together I think is really key. So you will receive all this information from us following this call, and we hope to see many of you actually in Madrid in September. Back to you, Derek, because
Okay,
as I said, there are other upcoming events as well.
I'll just finish off by mentioning the third webinar in our series, which is going to be on the Wednesday, the 8th of June, at the same time as this one. And that is going to be about insetting and offsetting. Now, we touched on this subject in Vienna and found that it was really, we'd uncovered something that was really quite interesting and quite difficult in some ways. Everybody knows about offsetting, and that's been going on for some considerable time. And some people are a little bit cynical about the positive impact of offsetting in that it allows people to carry on emitting and getting somebody else to take the consequences. So it's not necessarily a solution, but there was some discussion about insetting as being a rather more practical solution that really demonstrates commitment, but nevertheless quite complicated as how could that work? How does it work to get involved in insetting? Powerful if it works, but how does it work? Have we got some examples? So if you or anybody else knows of somebody who's been doing this and would be willing to share their experience, let us know. If you just want to come along and discuss it, we'll come along to that our next webinar on the 8th of June, and we'll be tackling this issue of insetting and offsetting. I think we're just about coming to the end of our session now, so I'd like to thank in particular Giorgia, Bart and Jörg for your excellent presentations. For everybody else, Dorothea and Peter and others who've contributed by their comments. discussion, and I hope everybody else who's been listening in has found it valuable. And stay in touch with the network. We've got a website that you can look at all the events on, and look forward to seeing you on the 8th of June. Hopefully, probably in person in Madrid in September. So I think, is there anything else we need to say, Bernhard? We can close it off, can we?
I think you covered it, Derek.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you,
thank you for an
everybody.
excellent facilitation job.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Giorgia.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.